Let's bring in John Tamny, editor of Real Clear Markets, and editor with Forbes Magazine. John, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
So how do you contain this? How do you make sure it doesn't get completely out of control? As Sean mentioned, Trump has already threatened to impose tariffs on almost all Chinese goods. So if that happens, what are the implications?
Well, the implications are bad for the American people, and my advice to Chinese authorities would be to expose just how much damage President Trump is foisting on 330 million Americans. The beauty of open trade is that the American people have talented people from around the world, including in China, competing to serve their needs. It means they get a raise every single day. It also means they get to sell in rising countries like China. And putting up these barriers, Trump is harming the American consumer, but he's also harming U.S. businesses. Apple gets 20% of its iPhone sales in China. Boeing sells 1/4 of its planes. The Chinese need to stress how damaging this will be to the American people as a way of waking the American electorate up.
So do you believe things are actually going to get worse before they get better?
It seems they're going to get better given President Trump's fundamental misunderstanding of trade, as in he is going to make things worse. He literally believes the American people are harmed when people from around the world are competing to serve their needs. The reality of work is that you're working in order to import. The fact that we get more and more from China every day is a sign of economic progress. President Trump actually wants to reverse that. I'm fearful that his misunderstanding will lead to worse.
But how much of a misunderstanding is it that he says this is about China's unfair trade practices? It's about intellectual property theft. It's about technology transfers. So, John, if not tariffs are the right approach to solve this dispute, how do you solve this?
You solve this by saying we're open to the world's plenty, that the U.S. is an open market. That's why we're the richest nation on earth, because historically we've been open to trade. And other countries, China included, you should lower your tariff barriers simply because it helps every single one of your people. In terms of intellectual property, what nonsense. If in fact it were a big issue, why is Apple, the most valuable U.S. corporation and the most valuable company in the world, manufacturing so much of its products in China? Why is Nike, one of the most valuable U.S. companies, manufacturing so many of its products in China? If the Chinese were really stealing from U.S. corporations, there wouldn't be such an American presence in the country to begin with. This is a canard brought from out of nowhere by an administration that does not understand the basics of trade.
So what is the end game here? Where do you see this playing out in the next few weeks, next few months? Do you believe these two sides, before things get completely out of control, they can sit down and try to have another round of negotiation with results this time?
I think so. I think both sides are ultimately, there are wise people inside the Trump administration, there are wise people among China's authorities who realize no one wins a trade war. The only reason we're working is to trade. To engage in a war is the equivalent of dynamiting bridges and cars and airplanes around the world that bring the world together. It's also the path to a lack of peace. And so I think ultimately the economic implications of a trade war are going to wake both sides up to avoiding what is only going to hurt everyone.
And very quickly, John, it's not China. It's not just China that the U.S. is waging a trade battle with. With aluminum and steel, you've got a dispute with Canada, you've got it with the EU, Mexico. You're a trade expert. Have you seen anything like this before? Every direction we turn, there is a trade war going on.
Well, it's interesting. Historically, all presidents have mistakenly done what President Trump is doing. The difference was they did it sheepishly, as in they did it to placate a certain special interest and then moved on.
And not to U.S. allies.
The fact that President Trump is bragging about this is so disturbing because, again, the U.S. is a rich country precisely because we're open to the world's plenty. This is the path to the U.S. being a poorer country, the more that we put up barriers to foreign goods.
We'll leave it there. John Tamny, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.